The most recent Devstream for Soulframe just aired today on March 27th, providing massive news for both Preludes 14 and Preludes 15. I'm Helen the Keller, and today we're going to discuss everything you missed during today's developer livestream for Soulframe. Starting off, our next Envoy Hour livestream from DE will be April 21st. Tune in on Twitch for only 30 minutes and get a Twitch drop for an access code to play Soulframe on PC that very same day. The team will also be discussing more casting gear, which could be regarding the spellbooks that were teased during Devstream 12. There is a new Spirit Guide cosmetic coming to the game with Preludes 14, and you can actually name that Birb. DE is holding a community contest where you, the player, can name the Spirit Guide by simply leaving the name that you would like to see in the forums. Link to that down in the doobly-doo. The team over at DE will select the top 10, and then they will give it to us as the community for a poll for us to vote on what our favorite name is. The top voted name will receive a Wild Paragons Founder Pack, and of course that will be the name of the Birb, and the 9 runners-up will receive 1,000 Arcs and 100 Rune Steel. We will get into the content coming with Preludes 14 and even some info on Preludes 15 in just a moment, but first, when will Preludes 14 actually release? The team is working to tighten up a few things mentioned during the stream like sound design, music, and gameplay visuals. As such, the team said we'll be getting Preludes 14 mid-April. Fingers crossed that means prior to that Envoy Hour, but there's always chances of a delay. Moving on to the new content coming with Preludes 14, first we have a new Pact, Fable, and Ancestor. The new Fable will be called The Wreck of Maestra Carmo. You can see in the background the gameplay from the stream where you face off against Maestra Carmo, which is the new Ancestor. The team did not touch on if we'll be able to interact with this Ancestor in the Nightfold, but that has been the case for the other Ancestors. We'll just have to wait and see if the Nightfold gets reorganized or rearranged, or even if this Ancestor ends up behind some of the other Ancestors that we already have. There is also a new Pact called Duelo. Again, you can see that in the background gameplay. Let's discuss the actual Arcanics and passives coming with this Pact. The Courage Arcanic, called Flintlock, is a high damage, single target aim and fire attack that will actually pierce through enemies, allowing you to hit multiple foes in a line. The Spirit Arcanic is called Bravada. This Arcanic has 2 parts. First is a team buff that will take your highest virtue and buff it for each team member. This is specific to each of those team members. So if your highest virtue is Grace, it'll buff your Grace, while if your next ally's highest virtue is Courage, it'll buff their Courage, and the same for your third teammate. And the second part of the Spirit Arcanic is a AoE slow on enemies, with the team saying this promotes that sort of quick-paced duelist vibe. And the Grace Arcanic is called Duelo, which creates this sort of ghostly clone. This acts as a sort of double strike that copies all of the damage you deal, delivering it again for a second time, but at a lower value. As for the passives in the Arch tree, the first is whenever you perform a perfect dodge, you will spawn a ghostly clone that draws enemies' attention. Think of this like the Trickster ability in the Siren Pact. And the second passive is on your melee attacks, there is a chance to apply bleed to your enemies. I do have some hesitations with the second passive, as they mentioned melee damage specifically, meaning if you want to build into this pact using magic weapons like staves or even bows, it may be a little bit hard and this will be a wasted passive. With that, a lot of people do pick up the healer passive, but you'll have to waste at least one of your Pact Art points just to get to the healer passive. I would recommend that DE actually switches the healer passive to be the very first in the Pact Arts node, but we'll have to see how this plays out. The other hesitation I have is if this is bugged like the Bromius abilities doing 1 damage, or if it just doesn't bypass enemy armor. We'll invest up to 9 total Pact points, and without a wild variant, our Pact points are very limited on where we can actually spread them out. I think DE could easily solve this by making sure that this bleed bypasses armor, and without bypassing enemy armor, that means it'll just deal 1 damage every time. Along with the new pact, there are 5 new weapons and 1 armor set coming with Preludes 14. We have Navala, the Rapier, which I believe will still be considered a longsword, Silistav, the new magic staff, Likewake, a new shield and sword, which I am personally super excited about, and 2 new weapons that DE did not showcase, named Espidarte and Cenotaph. These will most likely come in a future update during Preludes 14 called an Envoy Forge, which is how we got the Avex Bow and the Falk's Longsword. Along with the new weapons, like I said, we will be getting the new Maestra armor set that you've been seeing in the gameplay. I'll cover this more as it gets closer, but runes are receiving a major rework in Soulframe. The team touched on this, and the highest ends were a little bit overpowered, and the lower ends didn't feel powerful enough. The community seems somewhat split on this choice if you're in the community discords, but runes will now have charges that are bankable and can be expended using a charged heavy attack. The team did state that this means some runes will be completely reworked, so we'll have to see what changes are made and if any new runes are added. Joineries will also be receiving a massive change where DE wants to simplify the focus of Joineries. This focus will shift so that Joineries add 1 to 3 of those attunement pips to your weapons during the reforging process. Existing Joineries are not being removed but will be reworked into this new system. And the Joineries that have the bonus 25 damage will be worked into the Joineries to be tied to your weapon as it reaches rank 30. They did not show these on stream, but the team said there will be 5 new votives added to the game, which in previous patches were called mini-quests. The goal of these are so that there is always something to do and find in the world, but smaller in size than the actual fables. There will also be 2 new activities added to Soulframe in Preludes 14. To no one's surprise, the Northern Siege was finally revealed, and it is called Mure Fure. You can see that in the background gameplay, and it has a very awesome and unique aesthetic. You progress by first facing off against the Ode outside the siege, then progressing through some almost catacomb-like spaces, and eventually come to a very piratey rope lift, bringing you up to the main siege area within the castle walls. After progressing, you will face off against a new enemy called the Ode Conductor, which is a magic caster. And the second activity that I know I'm going to personally spend hours exploring is the Fallen Ode Castles, which are actually traveling into the depths of the fallen sky towers that you can find near the Medicant King and other Medicant enemies. The activity looks to be a new dungeon that the team said will have multiple tile sets, although they hadn't set on a specific number. And it will introduce a new enemy type in the form of worms and the new boss or Agari of the dungeon called the Ravgod Worm. Just as a personal note, I remember the Fallen Castles or Towers being the first thing in game that when I discovered them, I was very disappointed that I couldn't travel into, so I am beyond excited for this new dungeon tile set. Orlick will finally be receiving a much needed system update as well. This will be great for the new players and onboarding experience, and even just great for existing players as well. As much as I do love using outside resources like the Soulframe Wiki, adding tooltips and guides in-game that can help a player stay immersed and actually playing that game will always be a win for everybody. Orlick will have a progression system that needs to be ranked up through tasks that expand his research, introducing new players to systems that the game previously didn't really teach you, such as missing ancestors like Tuavolcani if you don't know how to start that quest, charming animals, equipping the totems that they actually give you, and so on. This will include a codex system that details enemies throughout the open world and their dedicated drops so you can easily target farm the items and materials you may need. As someone who started in Preludes 13, I can confidently say that this is such a massive win for the game and will really help with the new player onboarding experience. So if you've been hesitant to try out Soulframe, Preludes 14 is 100% the time to jump right in. And lastly, we got a tease for major upcoming system updates to crafting and how you actually obtain loot in Preludes 15. Gear will be dropping as pre-built or pre-crafted gear with random attributes in the form of standard and noble rarity tiers. These will have RNG qualities and quirks, but the team specified that this will add variety and spice to the current gameplay loop. The fragment crafting system and weapon upgrades with the blacksmith will remain, but for weapon crafting this will focus on a rarity tier they called Ancient's Gear. and they want to lower crafting times and requirements dramatically. They will offset these pre-built gear drops by having some sort of storage system so that you won't have to burn through inventory slots and arcs. There could be a lot of changes to this, as the team said the paint on this system is still very wet, but at the very least they wanted to give us a heads up. And that is everything you missed from Devstream 13. There were a few more tidbits regarding swimming being paused, a tease for mounts at PAX East during the Warframe panel, and a few Q&As that the team touched on. I do highly recommend checking out that stream. Again, I will leave a link to that down in the doobly-doo. This journey is just getting started on Voice, and we're going on this adventure together. Peace out, everyone.